Coming up on the Ensemble PSG Podcast, we're talking all about summer transfer market, former PSG players heading to the Premier League, and whether we should be worried about PSG's loss to Chelsea in the Club World Cup final. But first, a big thank you to everyone out there who has subscribed to Ensemble PSG on Substack. We could not do this without you, and we really appreciate your support. And as you know, this is an exciting time to be a PSG supporter. So if you're listening to this episode right now and you're not a subscriber, I hope you consider signing up. We've got some great content for you to check out from football journalists and PSG supporters. I've got a new piece up about what we learned from the Club World Cup. Zach Lowy has a piece about Gianluigi Donnarumma's contract situation. And Robin Berner highlights some potential transfer targets for PSG. And don't forget, subscribers, you also get access to our Discord server. So to get started, it's simple. Just visit psgtalk.substack.com. All right, let's get back to the show. Joining me today is PSG fan James Carter. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you'll certainly recognize his voice. He's come on this podcast before. You can also follow him on X at its_JCJ. We get into the Lucas Beraldo situation, why PSG hasn't met Bournemouth's asking price for Illya Zabarnyi, and expectations heading into the new season, and so much more. It's great catching up with James and hearing about his experience at the Club World Cup. It's a great conversation, and you'll hear it right after the intro. All right, welcome back to the show. James, it's been far too long since we've been able to connect, but always a pleasure to have you on the pod. How's your summer been going so far?
Summer's been really great, man. Thanks for asking. It's actually whizzing by as we speak. It's like the moment that you get into summer, you want to plan and try to do as many things as possible, but there's just not enough time. But just going to enjoy it as it comes. It's gloomy right now in Los Angeles, but it was pretty warm today.
You sound like a PSG player. They just went on vacation. Before you know it, the season's going to be starting. So they can't even really plan for a vacation because they're going to be back in training before they know it.
Exactly.
Well, let's get started with a topic that actually sort of brought us together in wanting to plan this show. And that was just minutes after Chelsea routed PSG in the Club World Cup final, which we'll get to that later. Loic Tanzi reported that Lucas Beraldo wanted to leave PSG this summer, and he told the club about his decision, and reportedly he wants more playing time. Not completely unfair. It's just odd that when the timing of that report came out just right after the final. That report went on to say that PSG are fine with it, but they want at least €30 million in a transfer fee, and they need a center back signing, which we'll also talk about later in this episode. Since that report, it's come out that Beraldo did not request to leave the club, and now you've got maybe Manchester United are interested in signing him. It's a lot of back and forth, and so I'm just curious, what's your read on this whole situation?
Yeah, I think for right now, everything is rumor. I obviously was shocked to hear of his alleged decision minutes after the final. But then to learn that actually didn't come from him, now the question becomes, well, where did that information come from? I think overall, as a player, and as we saw with the Club World Cup final, he's just not up to the snuff of a PSG player. It's not to say that he couldn't come off the bench, but realistically, especially for someone of his talent and of his youth, it probably would be best for him to go to another team where he can develop his skill set. Again, I think rumors kind of spread around this time of year. We can't really take everything with a grain of salt, but I do think that kind of shocked the club for sure, as well as the fan base when that information came out. And I think he caught the brunt of some real ill feelings coming off of that final.
Who would it benefit, that story coming out? I'm just curious. PSG are busy trying to get that Zabarnyi deal done at Bournemouth. Who would have released that, do you think? Who does it benefit the most?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, to be honest with you. I do think, and I said this to a few friends of mine, coming off of that final, although, we lost, but we still won the Champions League and won everything else, it still presents this situation where we lose a little bit of leverage because it was very clear to anyone that was watching that we are in need of a center back. And if you're a team that, possibly wants a center back or sees Beraldo as an opportunity to kind of pull him off of PSG, then maybe you would leak a story like that. Maybe that comes from Bournemouth, as we'll, talk about soon, as they're trying to kind of put the muscle on us when it comes to the transfer of their center back. So it's really hard to tell. I don't want to speculate too much as it pertains to that, but it was definitely a shock. And I think any player that goes or is playing on PSG would be a welcome signing for a lot of the top clubs from Europe, just because of the way that our athletes are trained, the way that they practice and take care of themselves. Like, he may not be the quality of PSG, but who knows? We'll see where he ends up, and maybe he'll be better off over there.
So let's get into it. What is going on with PSG and Bournemouth and Illya Zabarnyi? The latest report has Bournemouth insisting on a 70 million euro transfer fee, with PSG reportedly willing to go up to about 60 million euro. Why would this be dragging out so long? I mean, all we hear is that the player is giving preference to PSG, although now Tottenham has gotten involved and maybe some other Premier League clubs are interested in signing him. Why wouldn't PSG just pay that additional 10 million euro just reaching the final of the Club World Cup? I mean, that alone was worth 9, 12 million, whatever it was. I mean, they've got the additional funds. Why not just pay it and get this done? It's a key position that they need.
I mean, honestly, the old saying goes, if you give an inch, people will take a mile. And I think where PSG is as a club, especially now that we've won a Champions League, you want to set a precedent that tells clubs that you cannot muscle us around, that you cannot drop these exorbitant fees on us and expect for us to pay because we're desperate. We've just won a Champions League, and we've won it without Zabarnyi. And so, although I wish we would have won the Club World Cup final, clearly we don't necessarily need Zabarnyi, but we do need a center back. And so there have been other rumors about other players like Konate, floated around as possible replacements. I remember before he signed with Arsenal that the Valencia player, his name escapes me at this moment, was rumored to be on our radar. So I think these clubs are just seeing how much money we've made from, winning Champions League and winning Club World Cup. They know that we have the money. And so they're just trying to fleece us, but we have to remain firm. And I think the same thing happened when we were trying to sign João Neves, a few years ago, where we had a set transfer fee, and then the club tried to inflate that fee, and we just held firm until around August, and then they kind of came to their senses. I'm seeing that Tottenham is also in the running for Zabarnyi as well, but the player has already indicated that he only wants PSG, which is a really good sign, and it really feels great that a player is that clear in his statement, and we already have some initial player agreements kind of signed and ready to go with that player. So for us, it has to just be a matter of just waiting and having that patience. And if that player wants to go to Tottenham, then we'll see him at the Super Cup, and he'll be on the other side of the field, and God be with him.
Yeah, I didn't jot that down. I want to ask you about the Super Cup. That's a great point that you bring up there. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at Bournemouth's departures. I mean, Dean Huyson, who went to Real Madrid for 62 million euro reportedly. Are we thinking Zabarnyi is better than him? Did Real Madrid pick the wrong center back? Kirkez as well, a left back, went to Liverpool for just under about 47 million euro. So I mean, Bournemouth apparently have some players, but none of them, if you just go off of transfer value, they apparently value Zabarnyi that high, or they think PSG are suckers and just going to pay whatever they ask. I mean, which one do you think it is?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it can be a combination of a few different things, right? I think the two center back pairings that they had at Bournemouth between Huyson and Zabarnyi, that reminds me of the old Ajax elite side that they had a while ago with Delete and De Jong, right? So you have these sort of generational talents that come, especially like the younger players that come from these smaller clubs. I'm using the term smaller respectfully. And you want to hold on to that talent, or you want to be able to build around that talent. If you have to sell that talent, of course, you're going to want to sell that talent for top dollar. Now, there is the PSG tax that we always end up paying. Of course, these many of these clubs are willing to do whatever the Real Madrids or whatever the Barcelonas, say. Of course, that's always going to be the case. But PSG, we are in that tier now. We've made that clear in terms of our performance over the course of this season. And so, again, we can't be muscled around at this point. We have, and I mean, I went to a Club World Cup game. I went to the Atletico Madrid game, and you had to see the amount of PSG jerseys in the stands just from just children. And that sets a very clear precedent that PSG are a club of the future, are a club that the youth are interested in engaging with. And so that's going to be something that we're going to build upon for years to come now. So we can't just say, well, we have the money, let's just do it and get it over the line. If it is meant to happen, it's going to happen, but we have to hold firm and fast because there are tons of other players and clubs all around the world that are looking at this deal and saying, who's going to flinch first? And we have to be steadfast in our belief. And we have, some of the best negotiators on staff. I think we can get this thing done.
It might take Zabarnyi coming out and saying something public to kind of force his club's hand. We'll have to see if it gets to that point. I think you're right. PSG are holding firm. It's 10 million. Maybe you say, okay, maybe an add-on. If he hits certain metrics or whatever, clean sheets, then sure, we'll pay the extra 10. I think where fans maybe are getting a little bit restless is this is absolutely a position of need for PSG. Marquinhos is getting up there in age. We don't know how much longer he can keep going at this high level. And we saw what happens when William Pacho is out of the team. We saw that against Chelsea.
We lose.
And they just exposed that right flank. And Nuno Mendes was at times trying to guard two guys, and we saw how well that worked out. So we need a center back signing, a very high quality center back signing. And we're just like, come on, it's 10 million. But I definitely hear your point too. It's a delicate situation, but Luis Campos is so good at his job. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got 5, 6, 7 other Zabarnyi type players that he could identify and bring in if we need to.
For sure. And I think just one, thing to add on in support of Bournemouth's position, right? They still have to figure out who is going to be their center back replacement. You can't go into a season just transferring away all of your players and then you don't have a replacement. And so them figuring out the wage structure and basically how much money they're going to have available to make the decisions that they need to for their team moving forward, I think is something that they have to consider. What would be great is for us to do a deal where we just do a player swap with a few add-ons where you can swap Zabarnyi for Beraldo and maybe we pay, 30 mil or so, as an add-on. I think those kinds of transfers are a little bit more difficult to get across the line because the player also has to agree to move to that club. But, that could be interesting as well. I'm kind of doing FIFA brain right now.
I hear you. I mean, if it ever was going to happen, this seems like the situation. Zabarnyi has said he wants to come to PSG. Beraldo, I don't know, reportedly wants more playing time. I'm sure he does. So just a swap, go to a Premier League team. I think Beraldo would approve that. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. I sort of glossed over it earlier, but I want to get to this Club World Cup a little bit more. Just overall, you said you went to the Atletico Madrid game. What did you think of the tournament? Talk about your experience, if you will. And then were you a little concerned with how that final went?
Yeah, I think overall, it's always really good for the American fans to come out and show their support. And I can tell you just from, being at the Rose Bowl, there wasn't a seat that was empty. And that PSG. So I can't speak for the other clubs. I think if I were to kind of categorize my thinking here, I think that the South American teams really showed a tremendous effort and they should be taken more seriously and they should be respected and we should integrate them a lot more into just the overall model of world football and not just, every 2 or 3 years. I'll say that I think there was a lot of talent, whether you're talking about folks from Palmeiras or, River Plate. There were a lot of River Plate fans everywhere you went in the country. I will say that. I think in terms of the timing, the game that we went to, it was really hot outside. It was like noon And so, is there a world where we can sort of play some of these matches at night? Of course, I know the European fans, it'll be pretty late for them, but realistically speaking, it was way too hot, and there were way too many hydration breaks that needed to take place because the players were just really exhausted under that level of heat and intensity, right? That just doesn't happen really in like Europe. And so, even having a hydration break changes the structure of how you govern a match and how you play a match. I think, Chelsea, hats off to them, played a tremendous, tremendous game, and I won't take anything away from them. Of course, we were tired. Of course, our tactics could have been better. Of course, we were missing Pacho. But my thing is, if our entire squad is couched on whether or not Pacho plays, then it's not a complete squad, right? It has to have the level of depth needed so that if there are two red cards that happen to come out of nowhere and now all of a sudden our players are suspended for not one game but two, which was kind of crazy, didn't expect that. Um, we have the level of personnel necessary. I think, hats off to the manager at Chelsea for just putting together, a tactical masterclass. And, we got caught off guard a bunch of times with long balls to that right side of the pitch. I mean, I've watched so many tactical videos on this match now. It's making my head spin, right? Playing the ball onto the goalkeeper's right foot so that he can start the counterattack on the right side of the pitch where we were the weakest, like just tactical masterclass. Cole Palmer showed up, right? Like, I'm not sure the guy's name, Jao Paulo?
Pedro, João Pedro, I think.
Jao Pedro.
Yeah.
I like him, man. I like him. He's in your face. He's aggressive. He talks smack. Listen, I respect it. The only way to stop him is to beat him, right? Only way to shut him up is to beat
Luis
him.
Enrique folded him though.
Yeah, that was intense. He just grabbed him. I think he hit him. That's my manager. I'm going to stick beside him. But I think overall it was a really good tournament. I will say, I'm very concerned about the quality of the pitch, especially when it comes to World Cup football next year. I don't know how you solve for that, but players complained, managers complained. You could even see the pitch itself if you went to some of these matches. It was horrible, and they were still able to make do. I guess the last thing that I'll say there is PSG overall are entering a space as a club where you are no longer the underdogs, right? You're a top dog. And so teams are going to be gunning for you every single match. And that includes the Super Cup that's coming up with Tottenham. I don't want us to get comfortable and believe it's going to be a cakewalk. Teams are going to show up and be ready for us. That being said, we're entering a space, and I believe you've seen it with Chelsea, where you are going to have basically a side A and a side B, right? Where you will have to have a maybe not like for like, but at least a serviceable sub for each position on the pitch, with no exception, because we just play so many matches. And there will be times in the season where you'll have these trap games where you may be playing like an FC Nantes, and then you have a Champions League match the same week. You need to be able to rest your players, but you need to be able to continue to be competitive in the league. And so in those situations, you can have your side B ready to go to play that match, and you can rest your side A for your Champions League matches. And I think just the level of rotations and just computations that Chelsea was able to show, I think Chelsea have at least two players for every position, at least, maybe three. And so obviously they won't be able to hold on to all of that talent, but they've shown that depth is going to be very important, especially when you get to the business end of the competitions when it comes to the spring.
Especially this season. I mean, we're coming off of playing all those games in the Champions League, playing, 7 games in the Club World Cup, basically a month to rest, and then you're starting again. You're heading into a World Cup, so they're going to be focusing on that. You're going to be with your international team. There's going to be a lot of games. I echo a lot of those points you said, that we need to identify some spots where we need to find some quality depth and give players like Hakimi, especially, and Nuno Mendes, they need a break more than anyone on the team, I think. For me in the Club World Cup, I thought that, going into it, I thought that I got everything I ever wanted. I got the Champions League win. And so I was like, if they don't get out of the group stage, I don't care. It's fine. And then they kept winning, and then they kept beating, like, Bayern Munich. And so I thought, well, okay, we got this far. Let's just win the thing. They've given me no reason to think that they're tired and can't do this. But then we saw what happened against Chelsea. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. I think that game against Real Madrid in the semifinal at MetLife Stadium meant more to PSG than maybe they let on. I think that they were emotionally drained after that. I think that they wanted to beat Real Madrid and Kylian Mbappe. I think that was a directive from the top, from Nasser. I think there's a lot of bad blood between Nasser and Kylian Mbappe's camp. You saw Nasser in the box, with the Real Madrid president. He's pumping his fists, and I think that was their Club World Cup final, and they just were completely drained after that. Is there anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said if you look at the way in which PSG have governed and played their important matches over the course of this season. There's been the focus and the tactics on one side, but there's also been this sort of cultural inner belief that they've had, even going back to the Man City match, right? There's always been something where we are calling back to, almost like a superstition, to where they're playing with the fourth kit, for all of the important matches, and then in the final, everyone's nervous because we're not in the fourth kit, right? But there's always been a a rhyme or reason as to why we need to win this match. And so even looking at City, like we have to make a comeback, right? Looking at Liverpool, we're on the brink. We have to do something, right? Aston Villa has us on the ropes. We have to win. We have to hold firm. And then you look at the match with Arsenal, right? We have to make a statement. They're talking smack. We have to go after them. And then, of course, when you go into the Club World Cup, looking at looking at Real Madrid, I told someone I believe that Real Madrid match was our final in the Club World Cup. Just the way that we played it, the level of tenacity, the level of execution. There was, after the second goal, there was no way that Real Madrid were winning that match. Like, there was none. And I think it was a statement match that needed to be done, as well as Bayern, right? We had to exercise those demons, as well as Atletico Madrid. And so you can't keep like going to the well and trying to get more water. The well is eventually going to run dry. And so with the Chelsea match, outside of winning the champion that trophy, there was no additional um, motivation for winning that match. And really, you do need a bit of that going into some of these matches. And I think Chelsea and Maresca had all of that. They were the underdogs. How dare you say that PSG is going to rout us? We will show you. And their players came out with the intensity and the tenacity that showed you that they meant that. And we just didn't have any more magic to tap into. It just, the well had run dry. That being said, I would love to face them in the group stage along with Barcelona so we can have a different conversation. I'll say that. But I will say, and I know we didn't write this down in the docket, I'm going to make this brief. Kylian Mbappe, um, you know, sometimes in life, we want things to be one way, but they are in fact the other way. I haven't seen a player make that many mistakes consecutively in a very long time. And now we are seeing some of those same mistakes, some of those same issues that were happening at PSG are now happening at Real Madrid. Why is it that one of the best players to ever play the game in Neymar is having issues with you as a partner on the pitch? Why is it that the greatest player to ever play the game, who has no problems with any player that he's ever been on the pitch with, why does he have an issue with you? Why does Lionel Messi have an issue with you? And now we see that the second place Ballon d'Or candidate from last year in Vinicius now has a problem with you. Everywhere you go, it seems that this ego and diva mentality consistently follows you. And now you have a player like Rodrigo who is trying to find a new team when he was a star fixture on the Real Madrid side when they won the Champions League. Like, it's always you, but it's always you. And that is the problem. Until you get over that, you will never be able to achieve who you believe that you are supposed to be. And so the the route from PSG is more of a referendum on the player that you need to be, as opposed to PSG is just this unstoppable force, right? It has to, when everyone is good, when everyone is an amazing player, what else is there? When everyone is rich, what else is there? There has to be another gear, and it can't just be your self-serving ego of wanting to be the best player on the planet, especially when you have an 18-year-old in your division. He's coming, and he means business, and he's upset,
Yes.
and he's wearing the 10 now in a new stadium. Good luck to you. It's going to be a long season.
I was telling Jonathan Johnson on the last episode that I think Kylian Mbappe's career is at a crossroad. This upcoming season, this year, is going to be more important to him than any previous one. He has to win La Liga. He's got to at least reach the Champions League final. And he has to do really well with France, I think, in the World Cup. If he doesn't,
Yes.
then I think people really are going to start asking some serious questions about, did we sort of crown him a little bit too early? I think some of those flaws you pointed out, I think the spotlight's going to be a little bit brighter on those.
For sure. And I think what's really interesting is now you have a system with the Saudi League where you can just sell players that may be a bit older and their contracts are a bit too inflated, so you can bring in this new talent. So when you pop up, Killian, you are no longer the young kid on the block anymore, especially in a league where you have, people who are may still be in their prime going to Al Hilal. Like, I think we just saw a report about Isaac
Isak.
from Newcastle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he might go to. He's in. What are we doing right now? The point of that is you have to strike while the iron is hot, and you can't just say, "Hey, we'll get him next year," because there may, in fact, not be a next year. This is the time where he has to show and prove, and he's in Spain, where the media and politics are not in his favor. You are not at home. You are not at home. France might be a little bit more caring and kind to you. Not in Madrid. They're about to ship off Henry.
This could go downhill quickly for him, but something we'll definitely be keeping an eye on. Got a couple more topics, James, and I want to get your thoughts on. Let's go to the Premier League for a second. It's rumored that our old friend Xavi Simons is in talks with Arsenal, Chelsea, and Tottenham as he looks to leave Leipzig. Hugo Ekitike, he appears to be on his way to Liverpool. Add-ons could take that deal to about 90 million euro, believe it or not. PSG will receive a percentage of both of those transfer fees, as they were smart to include that sell-on clause for both of them. Just curious, who do you think is the better player? Who's going to have the better career in the Premier League?
Hugo Ekitike, 100%.
Is it because of the team Liverpool he's going to?
It's because he's a 6'3" striker. You can't teach that. And I think the Liverpool fans are going to love him. He's going to do amazingly well at Anfield. They'll be singing his praises. I think Xavi Simons is at a crossroads of his own career, much like we've talked about with Killian, where you have this projection of who you believe that you are supposed to be, this anointing that you are supposed to have, and unless the prophecy, quote unquote, is fulfilled, you can't get yourself settled in any team. And I think hindsight is a crazy thing. I wish we would have held on to Ekitike, but realistically speaking, where was the space for him to grow into the player that he needed to be, right? And so sometimes a move is best for everyone involved. And I mean, as you said, we'll still get some kickbacks from the deal, so that's great. We'll get to see him play in the Premier League on a really great Liverpool side that was definitely missing that key striker. They look really I think I have them maybe two or three in terms of all of the teams in Europe for sure. With Barcelona, of course, PSG at number one, but I think Ekitike has the higher ceiling.
Hmm.
I think he has the space to grow and develop into the player that he needs to be. I think Liverpool takes care of younger talent and actually gives them the chance and opportunity to grow into that position.
Hmm.
But I think, we're having the conversation about Xavi Simons and we don't even know what team he's going to possibly be on,
Yeah.
right? And so that tells you all that you need to know. There's no clear indication there. And he's not, from a priority perspective, he's not Rodrigo, right? Like that bit of business has to get settled before we see any kind of realistic movement when it comes to Xavi Simons. And so he has to wait a little bit longer for whatever that move is going to be. But I think he just needs to settle into whatever team he, eventually goes to. The dreams of going to Barcelona may have to be on hold until you show and prove yourself to be worthy of that kit. But also, there's probably a longer list of people trying to get to Barcelona, and one of those people just went over there today, Marcus Rashford.
That's right. Yeah. Finally, we can stop with the Rashford to PSG rumors. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where Xavi Simons ends up. I think he's pushing for Premier League. That injury kind of, I think, derailed him a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see the rest of his career. It's been kind of chaotic, all the teams he's been on and loans, and it's been strange. So it's something to keep an eye on. But the Premier League, after what I think is kind of a down year, a lot of their teams, their top teams, are sort of reloading and signing some really exciting young players. So definitely be watching the Premier League. What else do I got for you? All right. So, James, wrap up the episode here. The season, believe it or not, kicks off here in less than a month, the Ligue 1 season. And so for years, the question has always been, is this the year PSG can get it done in the Champions League? Are they going to do it this year? And then in recent years, it's been, well, this is kind of a rebuilding year because, Kylian Mbappe, and then we win it. So now that they finally won the title, what are your expectations heading into this new season? What are you hoping to see from the team?
I'll start with the easiest thing first, which is the continued evolution of Ousmane Dembele. And I mean that from a player perspective, from a leadership perspective, from a thinking and general sports footballing mind perspective. The level of growth that he has shown over the last 2 years is absolutely just amazing. And I don't think it was on anyone's radar. And so, what makes a person great is not just one season, it's how you develop over the course of many seasons. And I think moving into the overall team, what was important was for PSG to get that albatross off their back, right? It's almost like that scene in The Matrix where, you know, Neo is learning kung fu, and by the end of the movie, he doesn't have to, do any moves. He just freezes the bullets with his hand. And so that's kind of where I see PSG moving into, is to where you don't have to think, can we beat this team? We can beat all of the teams, but it is more so internally of us having the will and determination, much and the discipline to see out the games, to play day in, day out, night in, night out. That's going to be the real test. So it's not necessarily can PSG beat Real Madrid or can PSG beat Barcelona. It's can PSG not beat PSG? Can we maintain that level of mentality and intensity and that togetherness that we have shown? Can, our new stars like Desiree Doué maintain that humility and maintain that focus in order to develop into the player and the megastar that he can be? Can we see the clinical finishing from Barcola that we saw at the beginning of the year now reemerge into this season, because we are going to need those goals? I feel like a player like Kvaratskhelia is just a dog with a capital D. I have no notes. Just keep being that. Overall, I know that there will be some championship hangover, and I'm very glad. I'm not glad, but I'm appreciative that we got the reality check from Chelsea when we did, which demonstrates to us that there's still a mountain to climb. And that's going to be very important, right? That's going to be bulletin board material moving into this season. Yeah, we the champions, but we also got our teeth kicked in. So what are we going to do about that? How are we going to now show up? I think from a management and personnel perspective, this is the season where you end up seeing all of the injuries kind of total up, as a result of all the miles put on everyone's body from last year. You start to see all of these injuries start to pile up. So how are PSG going to maintain this continuity of a club, as well as get the players to optimal health? I think I even um, saw one of the players he had a bandage on his thigh, going into the final, and we're like, where did that injury come from, right? So Fabian Ruiz, he had like a bit of a injury, but it wasn't reported on. Like those little things end up adding up over time. Dembele is coming off of an injury. It doesn't mean he's 100% healthy. So making sure that we're getting everybody to that place of optimal health, building the depth that we need so that you have a megastar in Nuno Mendes. I want him to continue to be a megastar for years to come and not burn out because of all of the games that he's put on his body, especially Nuno and Hakimi. We need two fullbacks, period, right? And we also need a center back. I would love to see Marquinhos coming off the bench for PSG. Imagine it's like the 70th minute of a match, and it's 1-1, and now Marquinhos is coming off the bench. That's
He's
going
like
to
PSG's closer. He's the Mariano
yeah,
Rivera. Comes in.
yeah. Like imagine that, right?
Yeah.
Like that is debilitating for the opposition to see that we have that fresh player coming in, and so we just need to be able to continue the momentum, build that togetherness. If we're bringing in players, they have to play for the badge. This cannot be a rest stop for them to move on to another team. This has to be the team. We have to maintain our health. We have to maintain our togetherness, and I think we'll be just fine. Obviously, we want to repeat as Champions League winners, of course. That's always the goal. But you don't have to tell championship players that. They already have that in the back of their mind.
You mentioned Kvaratskhelia. Just going back to what we started with is, that's a player Napoli wanted a lot of money. We said, we'll wait. And then in January, the fee came down substantially. And then he turns out to be a catalyst in PSG winning the Champions League. So sometimes just waiting for your price ends up working. So if it's not now for Zabarnyi, maybe, who knows, maybe in January we sign him and we go win another Champions League title.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Thing I'll add to that.
Yeah.
One thing I'll add to that is I also saw that there was some noise about Thuram, the midfielder from Juventus, possibly being interested. That would be a game changer for us. I think he's like 6'3", 6'4" midfielder, tall, can go get balls in the air. It's something that we need in our midfield. Our midfield obviously it's kind of short, so we will definitely need that. But just getting those players in is going to be so key for us, and I really hope we are able to get those folks over the line and signed to our team.
Thuram, when he was at Nice, was a player I really liked and wanted PSG to sign. He went to Juventus, but as they're looking to sign Randall Colomwani, maybe there's something that could be done with that player coming PSG's way. There's a lot to talk about. We didn't talk about Donnarumma. There's, Warren Zaire-Emery. What's this season going to be like for him? There's so many more topics that we could talk about, but we'll have to save it for another time. PSG's next match, we mentioned it, is going to be the Super Cup final, PSG-Tottenham. PSG, I really don't want to see them lose two finals in a row, so they really need to win that one and kind of start the season off on the right foot. And then, August 17th, away at FC Nantes. So that's the season's getting started. James, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate you coming on. Always great to catch up with you. Thank you all out there for listening and subscribing. Really appreciate your support. We'll have a lot more on all things PSG, but until next time, bye for now.